Ever get that feeling like when you were a kid and, the world was just this massive, confusing thing?
Yeah,
You had
definitely.
to figure it out piece by piece. No one handed you like a dictionary of what everything was.
Totally. You just kind of learned by, I don't know, observing, I guess.
Exactly. And get this, today we're diving into AI that's learning to see that way.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, what's like giving AI a crash course in being a toddler.
That's a fascinating concept. So, what are we looking at? Some new research paper?
It's a Google patent, actually. Object discovery in images through categorizing object parts. KEGI, right?
Object parts. It sounds like they're breaking down how AI understands the world.
That's the heart of it. They're trying to teach computers to see objects without needing us to label every single thing for them.
Ah, I see. So, getting away from that whole dependence on labeled data.
Exactly. There's a big hurdle in AI right now.
Right.
Usually we have to feed algorithms tons of images
Yeah.
with labels like this is a cat, this is a car, and so on.
Right. Very labor intensive and not exactly how humans learn either.
Exactly. And that's what makes this patent so interesting. They're exploring how AI could learn this stuff independently, or like how kids do it.
Now, that is interesting. Okay, so how does it actually work? What's the secret sauce?
Well, the patent lays out a two-step system. First, there's something called the object part neural network.
Object part.
Yeah.
So is that like what it sounds like, breaking objects down into their parts?
It is. Imagine like a toddler's eyes,
Right.
just scanning their surroundings, picking up on basic shapes and patterns.
Right, like that's round, that's pointy, basic stuff.
Yeah, but here's the key difference. It's not looking for pre-programmed shapes,
Mm.
like wheel or a door.
Okay, so it's not relying on some predefined library of shapes.
Nope. It's learning these fundamental building blocks completely from scratch,
Yeah.
purely by analyzing the images it's given.
So it's like discovering its own visual language almost. That's really interesting.
It is, right. And that's where the second part of the system comes in the object detection neural network.
Okay, so this is where it goes from basic shapes to actually recognizing objects.
Precisely. It takes those learned parts and tries to figure out which ones usually go together.
Kind of like putting together a puzzle, I suppose. You've got all these pieces and you're trying to see which ones fit.
And just like when you finally get that aha moment with a puzzle,
You see the bigger picture, yeah.
this AI has its own aha moment. It's like, hey, those round things are usually under that boxy thing. That's probably a car.
So instead of us saying, hey, AI, this is a wheel, it's figuring out that those round shapes have some kind of relationship with the boxy car shape.
Exactly. And it does this all on its own. It's a much more intuitive way of learning. But,
Arch that.
well, this AI isn't just some superpowered toddler running wild.
Right, there's got to be some serious computation going on under the hood.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For example, the patent talks about how the AI creates these image templates.
Image templates? Now, what are those exactly?
So instead of storing like actual photos of these object parts,
Right, because that would be way too much data.
it'd be impossible. So it's like the AI develops its own visual language.
Interesting.
These templates, they're like simplified blueprints that capture the essence of a shape. A circle for wheel, a rectangle for door. You get the idea.
So it's not trying to memorize every single detail of every wheel it's ever seen. It's more like understanding the fundamental wheelness of a wheel.
You got it. It's about capturing that essential shape, not getting lost in the specifics.
That's a really clever way to approach it. But I'm guessing it's not just like, yep, that's a wheel and moves on. The real world's a lot messier than that.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the AI knows that. It doesn't deal in absolutes.
What does it deal in then? Guesses.
Probabilities.
Probabilities. Okay, so it's getting into statistics now.
In a way, yeah. The patent calls it part presence probability. Basically, the AI is saying, okay, based on what I'm seeing, I'm like 80% sure that's a wheel.
But there's that 20% chance it could be something else. That's fascinating. It's almost like the AI is thinking out loud, weighing its options.
And it gets even cooler. Not only does it figure out how likely a part is to be present, but it also estimates its position.
Its position, so like where it is in the image.
Exactly. They call it predicted pose.
Yeah.
It's figuring out where things are in space.
Okay, so hold on. Let me get this straight. We've got this AI that's learned a bunch of visual parts all by itself, each with a probability score and a rough location in the image. What happens next? How does it go from there to actually recognizing an entire object?
That is the million-dollar question. And that's what we'll dive into right after this quick break. So before the break, we were talking about how this AI is not only identifying these parts, but also figuring out their probability and position.
Exactly. It's not enough to just say, hey, I think that's a wheel.
It has to then go, okay, let me try to draw this wheel and see if it makes sense.
And that's where things get really interesting, because
Yeah.
it's in that comparison between the AI's drawing and the original image where the real learning
Right.
happens.
It's like, my wheel looks a little bit squished. Got to work on that.
So precisely. It's constantly refining its understanding through this back and forth. But it's not just about getting the shapes right. The patent also hints at some really interesting applications, especially in the art world.
Oh, like how? I
Mhm.
can admit, thinking about AI and art always gets me a little intrigued.
Well, imagine this. What if AI could learn to understand different artistic styles just by looking at the art itself?
You mean like feed it a bunch of Monet paintings, a bunch of Picassos?
Yeah,
Could it tell the difference?
exactly. It could learn to identify those core elements that make a Monet, those signature brushstrokes, the way light is depicted.
So it's like the AI is developing its own artistic eye, like an art critic or something.
In a way, yes, but it's not just about appreciating pretty pictures. This is some really practical applications too.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Well, take medical imaging, for example.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The AI could analyze X-rays, MRIs, things like that, and potentially spot patterns, anomalies that even a trained eye might miss.
And it could do that without us having to label thousands of images of, say, tumors.
That's the idea. It could learn those patterns on its own just by analyzing the scans.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. That could be huge for early diagnosis and treatment.
Absolutely. But the potential goes even further than healthcare. Think about anything that relies on visual data.
Okay, give me another example. What else?
Well, analyzing satellite images, for one. The AI could learn to differentiate between types of terrain, vegetation, even man-made structures.
So we're talking environmental monitoring, urban planning, even disaster response.
Exactly. And all of this without needing tons of manually labeled data.
It's incredible when you think about it. We started by comparing this AI to a toddler, but now we're talking about revolutionizing entire industries.
It really highlights the power of unsupervised learning, doesn't it? We're not just telling AI what to think anymore. We're giving it the tools to think for itself.
And that feels like a pretty big deal, you know?
It definitely changes how we think about the future of AI. This isn't just about making machines smarter. It's about making them more independent, more adaptable.
And who knows what they might discover along the way. Kind of wild when you think about it. We started talking about like toddlers learning to see.
And now we're talking about AI that could, change the world as we know it.
It's almost like we stumbled onto something much, much bigger here.
It really makes you wonder, if AI can learn to see this way, what else is out there?
What other senses could it learn? Like, could AI learn to hear or even understand language the same way this AI learns to see?
And it's not just about senses, right? What about emotions or ideas? Could those be broken down into these fundamental parts too?
Those are some seriously big questions. It's like this patent's just scratching the surface.
It's like we're suddenly looking at this whole new frontier of AI and we're just starting to understand what might be possible.
And it really makes you think about how we learn as humans, you know?
We tend to think of learning as this very structured process, especially when it comes to AI.
Right, like feed it the data, tell it what to think.
But this patent is showing us that there might be a different way, a way that's more, I don't know, organic.
More human almost.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we're seeing a new kind of intelligence being born, one that learns and adapts in a way that we're just starting to grasp.
It's exciting for sure, and a little bit intimidating too.
No doubt. I mean, who knows what the future holds for AI like this? But one thing's for sure, we're definitely entering a new era.
Absolutely. And it's an era full of potential, that's for sure.
Well, on that note, we're going to have to wrap up today's deep dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring this mind-blowing new frontier of AI with us. It's a wild ride, and we're just getting started.